Hey everyone, it's me, Rami Marks, your tangled yogi out here in Northern California. Welcome to the Seekers of Light Zentangle-inspired class. I'm about to teach this class for the San Rafael Public Library, but I thought I would share it with you as well. So let's talk about the things that we're going to need for class today. I will be working with the Micron PN Pen, the Pen from Sakura. This is a great pen for filling in large swaths of black ink. The Posca white paint pen. This is a really nice fine tip paint pen, and it's PC1M or 0.7 mm. I love this pen in lieu of a white gel pen. A lot of you have reached out to me saying that you struggle with the gel pen, and so that's why I've been using this one a little bit more. However, if you do like working with the gel pens, the Jelly Roll 10 is one of my favorites. I will be working with a graphite pencil and a kneaded eraser. This will be for building our string today in class. You know me, I am a Prismacolor girl, so grab your Prismacolor pencils. We're going to have a lot of fun with this. All of the colors for this class are written down in the class description below the video. If you don't have Prismacolor pencils, don't worry about it. Grab whatever color pencils you have and play along with us. It'll be just fine. Now I am going to be working with the Genesis tile. These are in the Tangled Yogi shop. They're super smooth paper, great for receiving color pencil. These tiles are 4.5 inches by 4.5 inches. If you don't have the tiles, don't worry about it. Grab your favorite sketchbook, make a square that's 4.5 inches by 4.5 inches, and you're good to go. With that said, let's get started with the Seekers of Light. So hopefully you've had an opportunity to gather all of your materials for class. Let's go ahead and do just a quick centering exercise. Go ahead and take a comfortable seated position, allowing your feet to touch down onto the floor. You can let your hands rest in your lap, allowing your shoulders to melt away from your ears, and letting your spine be comfortably tall. Allow your attention to come to your inhalation and your exhalation. As you inhale through the nose and gently exhale through the mouth, just letting yourself soften into the space. Inhaling and exhaling. And one more time, inhaling and exhaling. And just staying with your breath for the next few moments. I'm going to share a poem, and this is by Victoria Erickson, and she says, "I don't ever crave extraordinary moments anymore, just small, gentle hums of beauty, streaming from below, above, and beyond simply from paying attention. Sound, light, shadow, art, warmth, the night, the morning, dreams that are not far away but exist right here, already in my days, hands and heart." And letting that resonate with you for the next few moments as you take in a nice deep breath here and let it go with a sigh. And in your own timing now, wiggling in the fingertips and wiggling in the toes, and gently blinking the eyes open if you close them. And let's get ready to create. I've picked up my graphite pencil here, and we're going to start by taking the piece and turning it into 4 squares here. So I'm just going to come up to the top and look for the space where I think the middle is. And I'm just going to very, very lightly with my graphite pencil make 2 columns. I'm going to turn the tile and I'm going to do it again. So all I'm doing is creating those 4 boxes, and this is going to be our string for the piece today. So go ahead and do yours, and then when we come back, we are going to start in with our first tangle. So let's go ahead and talk about our first tangle today. So this tangle is a Gaelic word and it's pronounced Samhradh, but as you can see it looks a lot different when it's spelled out, but it is called Samhradh and it means summer, and she named it after her granddaughter, and I just think it's such a beautiful tangle. So let's go ahead and talk about it. So what you can do is just go ahead and start with a nice square on your page here, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a square right in the center. Once I've got that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to build these seed-like shapes that are going to connect to that square that's in the center. So you can see I've got that going. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go very, very softly and create the seed-like shape on the outside of the piece here. And what this is going to do is just kind of build some continuity into the piece. Now I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this so that you can really see what I'm up to. You can see that I've got these nice little shapes on the side here. I'm just going to go ahead and build two little lines, and I'm going to let them go on each side. Now once I've got that, I'm going to let this drop down, and I'm going to let this drop down, and then I'm going to go over to the other side and do the same thing, going across just like so. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my tile, and all I'm going to do is drop down and connect those to the lines that I've just created, like so and like so, so that I get this beautiful tangle here that we're calling either summer or Samhradh. So let's go ahead and bring it into our piece as well. Let's go ahead and bring this tangle into the piece here. I'm going to start in the upper left-hand corner, and ever so lightly with my graphite pencil, I'm just going to go ahead and take this piece and develop it into 4 boxes just by putting a plus sign inside of that square. Now I'm using this as a way of finding center in the piece. So I'm going to start by building my square just like so. Now once I've got my square in there, I'm going to go ahead and start to build those seed shapes, and I want them to touch the corners. And I'm going to try to keep my seed shapes about the same size. Once I've got that the way that I want it, starting from the point here, I'm going to very softly jet out, let it touch where the square is with a soft arch, and let it come down. Same thing over here, letting it jet out, touching the corner of the square, and then coming right back in again. Now we're going to use this fragment as our way of building our string a little bit more in the piece. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn. I'll come back and do the detailing later. So all I'm going to do, very, very lightly, build my 4 boxes inside of the square, remembering the size of this square and trying to do the best I can to mimic that size. Coming back in, creating that seed-like shape, letting it touch both corners here. Coming back up to the top, letting it jut out, touching the corner here of that square, and then dropping down. Same thing over here, letting it come out, jutting out, touch that corner, and come back in. And you can already see that the beginning of that diamond shape is starting to show up. Let's go ahead and turn the tile, making 4 squares in this corner. You can see that I'm just going to continue the line from the other side here, developing that square in the center, trying to keep it about the same size. Coming up, making that seed shape, another seed shape, Softly now coming out, touch the corner here as you arch over and in. Same thing here, touching the corner of that square as you arch over and in. Last one right here, continuing the same thing we've been doing the whole time. Letting this come over, building out the square the best way that you can, trying to keep them all about the same size. Once again, coming up to the corner, creating that seed shape, and once again, creating the seed shape. Soft arch coming out of the corner, touching the edge of that square, and once again, coming out, touching the edge of that square. And now we've got a really beautiful string for this entire piece. So go ahead and do yours. I'm going to do mine, and then when we come back, we're going to start to ink things in and bring more detail in. So I've gone ahead and picked up my pen, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to ink in my square here. And if you slightly missed your corners with your arch, this is a place where you can clean up a little bit. And now I'll go ahead and develop my seeds. I'll go ahead and come down in here. And remember, this is a place where you can clean up lines and make it more succinct for yourself if that feels good. And then I'm going to go ahead and let that arch drop down. Notice that it's touching the corner of that square. Same thing over here, soft arch. Let it touch the corner, and then coming back and in. And so that's really all I'm going to do throughout the piece. So I'm going to go into each of my corners, solidify my lines, and when we come back, we're going to start to add detailing. So let's continue by bringing in a little bit of detailing into the piece. Now, if you feel like you would like to remove your string lines from this piece, you can just grab a nice light eraser and just take out your string lines, and that will make the detailing of this a little bit easier. I just like to build the squares and the oval shapes first, and then I can go back in and do the line work that this really beautiful tangle requires. So you can see that I'm just getting through here and starting to remove any kind of lines that might be getting in the way. Okay, so once I have that, I'm going to start to build those lines that go through the piece. So let's go ahead and zoom in on this corner right here. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to do two lines that are going to come down. So it's going to look a little bit like this. I'm going to go ahead and go 1 and 2. And I might be able to get 3 in there, so I might do 3 this time. 3. Okay? And then I'm going to do 3 on the other side. So you're going to see me go ahead and drop down. 1, 2, and here comes 3. Now watch what happens here. I'm going to start with the original ones right here, and I'm going to let them continue. I'm just going to go 1, 2, and 3. Turning the tile and going to the other side. 1, 2, and 3. Once I've got that the way that I want it, you're going to see me turn this tile to make it easy for myself here. And all I'm going to do is start to connect to these. So I'm going to go down from the center here, connecting with the center one, and then I'll go to the next one, connecting with it, and then one more right over here, and connecting right there. I'm going to go to the one over here. I need to close that off. And here we go. Coming down from the center, looking where you're going, connect. One more right here, connect, and one more right in here and connect. Such a beautiful tangle. I really, really love this. Shout out to Sandy Vaughn, who is the creator of this. She is known as the Irish Tangler, and when I was coming up with this class, I was really looking for something that was St. Patty's inspired, but this was even better than that. It was just one of those tangles that really caught my heart. So let's go ahead and do this again. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start to build down from the side here. So all I'm doing is going down through the center, dividing the space in half. I'll go over to the top part, divide it in half, and then over to the bottom part and divide that one in half. Going over to the other side, starting by dividing down the center. One more time. And last one right here. Let's start to build the grid in the center. All I'm going to do is drop down 1, 2, 3, and then once again turning 1, 2, 3. Then when I'm ready, I'm going to go ahead and turn that piece so that I can connect my lines as I drop down from the top. So all I'm doing is coming down 1, 2, and 3, and then I'll go over here and do the same. 1, 2, connecting, and 3. So you're looking at where you're going as you're doing it, and look at how pretty this is as it's starting to build. So I'm going to go over and do these two. You go ahead and do yours. We're going to start to build in our lunar moth into the piece, but we're going to need to have a little bit of structure in here. So you can see that I've got these first two lines on either side of my squares that I have in here. I want you to watch me here as I go. I'm just going to come in with my graphite pencil, and I'm going to just let a little line fall down from that line and a little line fall down from that line. What I'm doing is I'm meeting these lines up. I'm going to turn my tile and I'm going to do it again. See how I've got these two lines right here? I'm just going to let the line fall down, and you can see that it's meeting that line there, and I'm going to let this line fall down. And what that's doing is it's building a little square in the center of the piece for us to put our little moth into. Now I am going to bring in a line that's going through the piece so that I also can tell where center is, because that's going to help me to build my moth. So you're going to have this little square in here, and then you'll have that little division line going through. All I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to start to go right above where that center point is, and I'm going to do just a little bit of an arch, dropping down and making a flux-like shape. And you want to make sure that this is a little bit of a shorter flux and a little bit wide, because the body of a moth would be a little bit wider. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and do a very small little head right on the top. Now once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and right where the head is meeting the body, I'm going to go out, meet the edge, drop down, and come back in just a little bit. I'll go ahead and do the same thing on the other side, going out, drop down, following the lines of the square here. And so you can see I've got those two wings on either side. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down the body of my moth here, and I'm just going to come down a little bit, come out, and meet the edge of that wing. Same thing over here, coming out and meeting the edge of your wing. To build the bottom half of this moth, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in, so you can see that I'm moving inward here. I'm going to do a soft indentation, and I'm going to do a soft indentation on the other side. So it looks a little something like that. I'm going to go ahead and use that indentation and then start to make a little bit of a diagonal line. Then I'm going to start to bring in kind of the swallow of the tail in here. and then I'll come back and up, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm using the side of the C, creating a little bit of a diagonal line, dropping down, making that part of the tail, and then coming up and meeting the piece. So there you have the lunar moth body, and then we're going to use two little leaf-like shapes up top, and these are going to be for where his antennae are. So go ahead and build this part, and then when we come back, we're going to start to do some inking in and add some detailing. Let's start to ink in the body of the Luna moth here. So I'm just going to start where I began beforehand, and I'm just going to come up, over, and start to develop that soft body shape of the moth. I'm going to come in with a soft little arch over the head here, and then I'm going to follow the lines that I created in here. So really keeping it soft and easy. You can see that I'm just going to move that tile to make it work for my hands here, and I'm just letting it drop down the sides of that square. Once I've got that, I'm going to go ahead and arch down a little bit and come back up, and then I'll arch down a little bit and come back up. So those are the wings of the moth here. And then to do the bottom half, I'm just going to do those little soft curved lines. I'll come back in, do a little diagonal line, let it come in, and come back up. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So here's that little soft curved line here. Nice diagonal line dropping down, let it touch the edge of that square, and then coming back and up. And so there you can see the lunar moth. And then inside of here, I'm not using these leaf-like shapes at all. I'm just using them as a guide here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a line that's going through the center of the leaf-like shape, and then I'm going to go ahead and let those lines touch the edge of the leaf-like shape. And I'll do the same thing on the opposite side. So just a couple of lines on each side, and that's what's going to give me that really nice feeling inside of the antennae for the moth. Okay, so you go ahead and finish up yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and then when we come back, we're going to go ahead and do some final detailing around the outside of the piece. So outside of the diamond here, and then we're going to do some in the corners, and then we'll come back and do some detailing in the moth. So to give a little bit of interest around the moth here, I'm going to go ahead and start to build into these V-like shapes that I have here. And you'll notice that I've left that square in there for a little bit of guidance so that it doesn't get out of hand in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up about halfway through the piece here, and I'm going to go ahead and do an arch, and then another arch. Now once I've got that, I'm going to go ahead and do the tangle fescue, which is just a line with a teardrop shape. Now on either side of this fescue, I'm going to put a shorter one. And you'll notice that all the fescues are going in the same direction. Now I'm going to do another tall one again, and another tall one over here, and then I'll do a little one over here, and a little one over here. I'm going to pool my ink, just like so. And that's the shape that I'm going to go all the way around with. And you'll notice that I did not go past that square line with the fescue. Okay, so let's go ahead and do one more together here. I'm going to go ahead and come about halfway up. Nice soft arch. Another arch right behind it. A nice tall fescue. Two short ones. Another tall one. Another tall one. And then two short ones on either side. pool your ink. And there you have it. So I'm going to go all the way around and do mine. You go ahead and do yours. To bring a little bit of a graphic feel into this piece, what I'm going to do is I'm going to work inside of these little flower heads that we have here. And I'm going to do a little circle, and then I'm going to pick up my IdentiPen. And this is just a thick nib pen. If you don't have one of these, you could pick up a Sharpie and that would work in lieu of it, or your favorite nibbed pen that you like to do pooling of ink with. And all I'm going to do is just start to bring in a little bit of that graphic feel with the black. You can see that I'm working around that little circle there. Now for those of you who have a white pen, you could skip the circle and just work your way around, but I just decided to do it that way. So I'm going to go all the way around and do just that in each of my little flower heads. So our next tangle is called Rosalyn, and Rosalyn is a tangle that we used a long time ago in one of our classes, and it's such a great tangle, and this is by Wen Kung, and I just love this tangle. It's a great corner piece. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use a little square, and all I'm going to do is in the corner here I'm going to create these two seed-like shapes. I'm going to bring in a petal shape over the top of it. I'm going to step down on that petal shape and draw an arched line going out to each of those leaves. And in the center, we're going to put in another flux and then a fescue in the center. And that's how we're going to use Rosalyn today. So let's go ahead and bring it into our piece. Now when I'm working with the tangle Rosalyn here, one of the things that I like to do is I like to find the midway point from the corners to the corner here. So you can see that it's in between here and here and here and here. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to create a nice soft arch right there, and then I'll do another soft arch right here. And that means that they'll be pretty much equidistant. I'm going to go ahead and do that really pretty petal-like shape. And then I'll go ahead and step down a little bit towards the edge of that petal, let it come out to the corners there, and then I'm going to go ahead and go up, over, and around, creating flux, and then the fescue. Now I am going to go ahead and just pick up my pen, and I'll go ahead and start to ink in Rosalyn's petals here, and those soft arches that meet over at the corners. And then once again, coming in and bringing in flux and bringing in fescue. And I'll pull inside of the fescue. And so that is how we're going to bring Rosalyn into the piece. Now I'm going to do that in each of my four corners. You go ahead and do yours. So I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of my kneaded eraser here, and I'm going to let go of the string that I used to create our moth here. And you can see that as I let go of those strings, the antennae take on the shape of the really nice leaf that was there. And so now we're ready to start bringing in color into the piece. So go ahead and let go of your string lines and anything that might be in your way. And when we come back, it's time for color. I'm going to start out by picking up the True Green, which is PC 910, and also the Grass Green, which is PC 909. Remember, all of the colors are available to you in the class description below the video on YouTube. So we're going to start with the lighter color first here, and you can see that this is really well sharpened up. And we're going to start to work inside of our tangle right here in the corner. I'm going to begin by coming in with a little bit of that True Green and letting it kind of dust its way through, and just bringing a really nice soft mist of color into this part of the tangle. Now once I have that, I'm going to take a little bit of my grass green here, and I'm going to start to bring in a little bit of that grass green into the points. I'm going to come back in towards the top and give this a little bit of pressure to get some drama out of that color. So I'm just giving it a little bit of pressure, and then I'll go over to the other side and I'm going to do the same thing. So I start lightly first, and then I'm going to give it a little bit of pressure. Now once I've got that the way that I want it, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on that, I'm going to come in with a little bit of my true green and just do a little bit of blurring of color here. So you're going to see me just come in and do a little color blur right where the line of demarcation is, where the dark green is meeting the light green. And you can see that I'm doing little circles to soften it up. And then I'm kind of falling back into that color just to give it a velvet softness. Now, once I have that, you can come in here with a little bit of your white color pencil. This is PC 938. If you have a color pencil set, it generally will have the white in there. And you can see that just coming in with a little bit of that white even gives this more of a velvet feel. It blends it out and gives it a softness, especially if you're working with really toothy kind of paper. Now, if you want to give this a little bit of a pop, I happen to have Goldenrod here. This is PC 1034, and you can come in right at the very top and just do a little splash of Goldenrod right here at the top, and you'll notice that this almost gives that true green a lime peel green kind of feel. So you don't have to, play around too much to get a really interesting feeling out of your colors. You can really just play with the colors that you're working with. I love the way that that looks. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side, and then when we come back, I'm going to start to work in the center. So you can see that I've done both sides here, and now I'm going to start to work inside of our little checkerboard that we have here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with that true green in here. And by the way, if anybody is doing the video and they don't happen to have the Prismacolor pencils, really just try to get within the same hue, or do something completely different. Remember, we're here to play and have fun. It doesn't have to be exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm just getting in here and adding in my green, and you can see that I'm switching to every other box as I move through here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in on this so that you can see it. I'm going to go ahead and pick up my darker green, and I'm going to give it a little bit of a shadow going about halfway through these boxes. Just giving it a little bit of interest. And you can already see that that's starting to give this a little bit of a pop where it didn't before. And then I can pick back up a little bit of that true green and just blend that line of demarcation a little bit just to soften it. Now we will be coming back in here a little bit later and adding our violets and our purples in here, but for right now we're going to leave those white spaces alone, and just look at how pretty that is in that corner. So I'm going to go all the way around and work that same way in each one of these different little fragments that we've created. Okay, so have some fun. Remember, get into the zen of it. There's a lot of repetition going on here. It's an excellent time to relax the mind. Let's continue to carry our color through the piece here. We're going to go back to where Rosalyn is here, and I'm just going to start with a little bit of that light grass green here, or rather the true green, so sorry, true green. And I'm just doing a soft dusting in this corner, and you'll notice that when I'm doing this, I'm leaving a little light source in the center. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side, just giving this a little bit of a dusting and leaving a little light source in the center here. And then I'm going to bring some of that into the background as well. So I'm just going to bring it in to this little area in here. Now I'm going to take the grass green, which is the darker green, and start to bring a little bit of that through where the true green was, about halfway through. I'm going to give this a little bit of pressure at the bottom, and I'm also going to give it a little bit of pressure at the top. When I get near to this petal, I'm going to give it a shadow. I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. And then I'm going to give a little bit of pressure at the top over here. And I'm going to bring in a little bit of pressure at the bottom. I'm going to take some of that lighter green. Once again, this is the true green. I'm going to blur the line where the dark green is meeting the light green and kind of dive into it. This is going to give that color a little bit of richness. Same thing over in here. And then you can come in with some of that white and soften the whole thing up where the light green is meeting the white. Same thing in here, you can soften this up a little bit. Same thing over here. And once again, breaking that up a little bit too. And if you wanted to, you could also come back in with a little bit of that goldenrod, and you could add just a dusting of that goldenrod in there just to give it a watercolor feel. Same thing down in here. So I'm going to go all the way around the piece here and add those greens into each of those corners. You do the same as well. Allow yourself to get into the groove with this one. So let's go ahead and start to bring these greens into the centerpiece here. I'm going to take the true green, and you can see that this is pretty well sharpened up. I'm going to just go ahead and lay that pencil down on its side here and start to fill in this little moth that we have in the center with a light mist of color. So you can see that I'm just getting a light dusting of that color into the wings here. And just very, very lightly creating a foundation for the detailing and the wallpaper that we're going to be doing inside of our moth. Now I'm going to go ahead and zoom in just a little bit here, and I'm going to add just a little bit of a shading right in the center of where this moth is, and you can see that I'm not touching the edges. I'm leaving the edges nice and light and just leaving a little bit of a dusting of that light green in the center of our moth. And then I'll come over into this little part of his head and just give that a little dusting as well. So go ahead, do yours, and then when we come back, we're going to start to introduce a couple more colors into our moth. So I've gone ahead and I've picked up my Cobalt Turquoise in here, and I love this color because it has kind of a teal feel to it. We're going to start to bring in a little bit of detailing into this moth here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start right where the head is starting to meet the body of the moth, and right where the wing is meeting as well. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take a line and let it divide the space in half. Once I've got that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do another line that's going to come out from the side here, and then I'm going to do another line that's going to go up. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side here. So just coming from that same point and dividing the space in half, and then dividing this space, and then one more time dividing upward. Now once I have that, I'm going to start to work with the lower pieces in here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and start to bring that division coming from this center point right here. So all I'm doing is coming in and dividing. I'll do another one right here, and then I'll do another one up top. Same thing on the other side here, letting it emanate from the same place. Going a little bit further down, and then one that comes up. So now we have our spaces in which we're going to work in. Now I'm going to continue to work with my Cobalt Turquoise here, and I'm going to start to add a little bit of a dusting of shading in here. So this is going to start to get a little bit of that Cobalt Turquoise, and I'm going to let that come out about halfway, and then I'll come back in right towards the center and give this a little bit of pressure. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to skip this one and come down to this one and just bring a little bit of that Cobalt Turquoise in there. And then I'll go ahead and give that a little bit of pressure. I'm going to start to work underneath into these pieces right here. So I'm skipping the first one and going to the second one. And then I'll do one more, and that's going to be closest to the body of the moth that we have here. Now if you would like to add a little circle into your piece, you can add a little circle. That's a detailing that you might see on the lunar moth pretty regularly. And then I'll give another circle on the other side to keep it congruent. I'm going to give this a little bit of pressure. And then once I've got that, I'm going to take a little bit of my white pencil, and right where the Cobalt Turquoise is meeting the true green, I'm going to go ahead and blur this out. And I love how these two colors meet each other. It's so pretty. And you can dust back into that Cobalt Turquoise and really get this really kind of electric feel. Do the same thing over here, letting it dive back just a little bit, coming in here, and then I'll go ahead and bring this right in here as well. And you can pick up a little bit of your true green if you want, and bring a little touch of that right along the edge of that Cobalt Turquoise. These two colors really have a beautiful match, and I love how it makes that Luna moth look so pretty. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on the other side. You go ahead and do yours, and then when we come back we're going to add a little bit more detailing into the moth. So I'm going to take some of that true green and start to bring it back in right in here. I'm going to give this a little bit of pressure. let it start to have a little bit of contrast next to the color that's right there. Give it a little bit of pressure down in towards the center here. And then I'll do a little bit down underneath here so you can see that I'm going to get right under the wing of that moth. And then I'll also come over in here and start to bring in a little bit of that and a little bit of pressure up towards the top. Now I'm also going to take some of that true green and start to let it dive down into where we have the little kind of tail of the moth here. I'm going to give this a little bit of pressure. And then I'm going to come in with a little bit of that grass green and really define the edge here. I'll take a little bit of the true green and just blend it up. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do that to the other side, and then when we come back, we're going to start to add a little bit of a tangle right inside of our moth. So once you've got your moth the way that you want it here, I'm going to turn the moth on its side here. And I'm going to start to bring in a little bit of a leaf motif inside of this. And so all I'm going to do is I've got my grass green in my hand. This is the dark green that I'm working with here. And I'm just going to bring out a little bit of a stem that's mimicking this line that we have right here. At the very top of the stem, I'm going to bring a little bit of a leaf-like shape right in here, and then I'll go ahead and I'll start to alternate these little leaf-like shapes, and you can see that that pencil is really well sharpened up because we're working in such a small space. You really want to have a nice sharpened up pencil. Just a little bit of wallpaper in here, and then I'll go over to the other side and I'll do the same thing. So that line started right about there. I'm going to let it flow right out, bringing in that little leaf, and then starting to alternate those leaves inside of the little moth so that you get this really sweet kind of motif inside of the moth. Okay, and then I'm also going to bring in just a touch of that grass green right along the edge of where that true green was, just to give this a little bit of contrast in here. I'm going to come in and start to bring a little bit into the head as well. And if you wanted to, you could even come into where the true green is meeting in towards the center of the body and give just a touch of that grass green right in there, just to give it a little bit more contrast. You know me, I'm always looking for a way to make these colors pop. I just love working with the Luna moth. I was reading about it and they were saying that this is a beautiful symbol for those who are seeking light. And in these times that we are living in right now, I think we could all use a little bit of light. And so this moth is a symbol of light, for sure. So I hope you're enjoying this and liking what's on your page. I could even go into where we have these little orbs and give a little shadow on one side just to give it a little bit more interest. So play with the Luna moth, have some good times with it, and then when we come back, we're going to switch into a different color. Let's go ahead and leave the greens behind. I'm going to bring in my purples. I've got violet in my hand, lavender, and process red. Remember, if you're not using Prismacolors, just go ahead and grab colors that are similar to these. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take the lightest color first, and we're going to start to work in our Rosalyn up here. And so all I'm going to do is just do a very soft dusting of this lavender all the way around that petal, not inside of the flux, but just in the petal itself. I'm going to give this a little bit of a dusting, picking up a little bit of the darker purple. And let's go ahead and zoom in that and just give a little bit of shadow right along the edge. Coming in and doing a little bit more. Let's give that a little bit of pressure down at the bottom. Now I'm going to pick back up that lavender and just blend this out a little bit. And then you guys know me, I like to make this look like a little bit of watercolor. So I'm going to take some of that process red and just randomly bring a little bit in just to give this a little bit of interest. And you can see that that just gives it a little bit of pop. You could even take your white pencil, making sure that there's nothing on it, and just give this a little bit of a blur. You can see that that gets really velvety and soft. It's so, so pretty when these colors all work together like this. So that when I bring it out, look at how pretty that is. It has such a nice relationship there. So go ahead and do yours. I'm going to do mine, and then when we come back, we're going to take that and start to bring it into our tangles itself. Now that we've got these beautiful pops of color on the outside edge, I wanted to bring it to the inside as well so that it had a nice relationship. So you can see I've got lavender in my hand here. And what I'm going to do is just very, very lightly start to bring that lavender going across. Now you're going to see me be a little bit more mindful about going in between where the fescue are and going in between where the antennae of the Luna moth is. You can see that I'm using little circles to get that soft mist of color. Just like so. Now I'm going to do something called a perimeter shade, and we all know this shading from Zentangle headquarters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a little bit of that violet, and let's go ahead and zoom in on this. I'm going to go ahead and start to bring that violet all along the side of that really pretty tangle that we have there, and along the side of where the butterfly or the moth is. So you can see that I'm just giving this a really soft dusting. So I'm not going heavy with that violet. I'm just keeping it nice and light. Now I can come in right along the edge, and I'll give this a little bit of pressure. You can see that I'm just going along the black line here and giving it a little bit of pressure. Same thing over here, just a little bit of pressure. Now I'm going to pick up that lavender, and right where the violet is meeting the lavender, I'm going to do little circles to break up that line of demarcation. And same thing over here. Just softening it up a little bit. You can see I'm diving back a little bit into the violet itself. And then I'm going to pick up a little bit of my white, making sure that there's no other color on it so that we don't get muddy in here. And I'll just start to blur this out. And this is really where this gets really kind of painterly in here. I'm just running it across. Same thing over here. Just keeping it really soft. Letting it kind of float down towards the edge of the moth here. And then you know me, I'm going to pick up that process red and I'm just going to start to give little dustings of it to make it feel like watercolor. Do you want it to be somewhat random and soft? You could pick up a little bit of that lavender and kind of run it near where the process red is just to kind of blend it out. And you could even pick up a little bit of that white and really get it painterly in here. Isn't that so pretty? I just love the way those colors all blend with each other, and it gives it such an interesting feel. So I'm going to go into each of my corners and do just that. You go ahead and do yours. You can see that I've had a chance to go all the way around in the center. I'm going to add just a little bit of a shadow inside of where we've got our moth here. You can see that I'm working with violet, and I'm going to be just adding a little bit of a shadow right where those little parts of the tail of the moth are coming down. So just bringing a little bit of that shadow in here. And then I'm just going to go ahead to the outside edge of the moth here and just give a little bit of interest right along the outside edge. And I'll go ahead and do just a slight bit on the other side as well. I'm going to take a little bit of that lavender and soften it up, just doing little circles where that violet is meeting the lavender, just really keeping it nice and light. Same thing over here. Little circles. And same thing in the center. Really being mindful to leave some lightness in there. Can take just a little bit of your white pencil and start to blur the edges. Same thing over here. Blurring the edges. I'll break it down into the center. Excuse me. And if you feel like you lose that purple, you can come back in and just give it a little bit of a press. And you can see how that just gives a little bit of interest into the center. And then I'll come in just with a little bit of that process red and just bring some little spots in there just to keep it interesting. So go ahead and play. And when we come back, we're going to add some of that purple into our outside tangles. Okay, so we're going to take some of that lavender and come up into these areas right in here. I'm going to take that lavender and just go into where the seeds are. And you're going to see that I'm going to leave a little bit of lightness in that upper left-hand corner there. Let's go ahead and zoom in on that. Now I'm going to take a little bit of that violet and start to bring a little bit of a shadow right underneath that gemstone. I'll go ahead and give a little bit of pressure right along the line. And then I'll come back in with a little bit of that violet, or rather the lavender, and start to blur it up a little bit. And then if you want to add just a touch of that process red in there just to give this a little bit of interest, you can do that as well. Picking up a little bit of that white pencil and just starting to blend these all together here, leaving that lightness in the upper left-hand corner. You can see this gets really pretty. And then if you want to come back in right along the black line and give that a little extra pop, you can see how pretty that is. Isn't that lovely? So I'm going to do that down in here, and then on the other side I'm going to go in the opposite direction, leaving the darkness on the inside and the lightness up top. Okay? So have some fun with that and play. Now that we have all that in, you can see that this is really starting to have a nice balance to it. I'm going to come back to our checkerboard, and I'm just going to go in with a little bit of that lavender right where all of the white is, and just start to balance out the checkerboard. Once I've got all of that lavender in there, I'm going to pick up the violet, and just the way that we did with the green early on, we're going to add just a shadow on the right hand side, just to give that checkerboard a little bit of dimension and interest. Once you've had a chance to get through that checkerboard, you can come back in with a little bit of your white, or you can come back in with a little bit of the lavender, and you can soften up that line of demarcation and get those to really kind of blend into each other, so it's not got a hard line but just a little bit of a soft shadow on one side. And so that's the way I'm going to handle those. So I've picked up Goldenrod, which is PC1034. This is kind of a mustard yellow, and you can see that it's pretty well sharpened up. And I'm going to come down into this corner right in here and lay the pencil down on its side and just give this a really soft mist of that yellow color. And this is going to bring a little bit of a pop into the background. Now, once I've got that in the corner there, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. I'm going to come in and I'm going to start to bring some pressure right along the edge in here, just to give this a little bit of emphasis. And then as you are working your way away from the edge, you're going to lighten up your touch, just to give it a soft blend. You can always use your white pencil for that soft blend, but you can see that as I move away, I'm just lightening up my touch. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and move right into where our flux, or rather our fescue is, and then I will do some shading with that fescue by pressing a little bit harder on that one side, and just giving it a little bit of interest there. So go ahead and do yours. I'm going to go around and do all of mine. For those of you who enjoy doing a little bit of highlighting inside of the piece, I added my highlights, and I'm going to be using the Posca pen. This is the PC1M, or you can use your Jelly Roll 10. I'm going to come in right here and just add a little bit of a line and a couple of dots. I've really been enjoying working with this pen lately, and I know for some of you, you've said that it's difficult for you to work with a gel pen, and I do love these paint pens. They're wonderful. And then the other thing that I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to put in a little dot on the darkest side of the green dots in here, or the green squares, just giving that a little bit of interest. I like the way that that looks, and I think it kind of gives it a little sheen or a little bit of sparkle. And then finally, you can come over to where you have your flowers here, and if you wanted to, you could give a little bit of a sheen on the edge of your flower just to give that a little bit of a pop. So that's how I'm going to handle these pieces today. You go ahead and have some fun with yours. So I'm just going to come in here and look for any lines that I feel like need a little bit of love. Like you can see down in here as I zoom in on this that a little bit of my color pencil went over my fescues, and so I'm going to clean those lines up and just give them a little bit of love, or look for any other spaces like right in here on my butterfly or my moth. It's gotten a little bit misty around the lines, and so this is just a really good opportunity to just pause and take a look and see what needs a little bit of love in your piece. So I'm going to come in here and add my chop right down here at the bottom, and that's just your initial, and it's your way of saying that you feel like you have completed the piece. This is a really great time to take a moment to offer gratitude for the opportunity to create today, and just to give yourself a little bit of a time out, or even just to do some self-care. Now, I do want to show you another option that I did inside of the piece in case you're feeling like that background is a little bit quiet. I added some bubbles or some tipple into my background, and that kind of gave it a really kind of mystical feeling. So that's another way of looking at this if you wanted to add some really kind of nice soft floating orbs into your background. So if you enjoyed today's class, go ahead and give the class a thumbs up, or leave a nice comment in the comment section, or even better, hit the subscribe button. That way you'll be notified every time I add a new class to my YouTube page. And even better, share the class with a friend. You never know. Somebody might want to try Zentangle in color, and this could be a really great jumping off point for them. So please do share it, or just sit down with a friend and do the video. It's such a nice way to create community with the people that you love. Now, speaking of community, I would love to see your creations over on our Tangled Yogi Art community page on Facebook. We have such a great group of students. They all do the classes differently and add their own spin to it. We all learn a ton from each other. I'd love to see your work there. Well, that's it for me. I'm Rami Marks, your Tangled Yogi. Thanks so much for joining us today, and I look forward to tangling with you soon.